Hello and welcome to the Awakened Intimacy Podcast. I'm Aaron.
Hello. And I'm Greer.
We're really excited once again to show up and deliver as much value as we can here on the Awakened Intimacy Podcast. Today we're diving into something really important because nearly all couples that are experiencing conflict, turbulence, disconnection, the surface level problem for them is communication. And it's valid 100%. And from our perspective and what we've seen working with many couples and in our own relationship is that if there is a limited emotional intelligence, it doesn't matter what communication tool or framework that you're using, if you don't actually have the self-awareness to know what's going on internally at the root cause underneath the surface, then the real issue is never going to resolve. The pattern is going to keep on repeating because what's driving the pattern is these deeper, unprocessed, unconscious emotions. And the big one that we've seen time and time again, and there are others, but primarily the core one that gets in the way or creates the most turbulence is shame. In particular, toxic shame. So that's what we're going to be going into today and exploring that as a topic in and of itself before we look at resolving conflict and pursuer distancer dynamics and everything that occurs when a couple is experiencing conflict.
Mm-hmm. And as Aaron's wife who witnesses Aaron, because you do most of the planning for these podcasts, and you had started off planning for this podcast and it was going to be on the pursuer distancer, and it was really in developing that you recognize actually we need to come back to shame first, because we recognize that the pursuer distancer wasn't that predominant in the early stages of our relationship or current, but particularly it was the shame work that's actually what really helped us to go really deep. And in some ways that's what motivated us. Like, in order for us to get to those depths, we had to improve our communication so that we could go there. So it's not like you get your shame work done and then you do your communication. It's very much in tandem, but we needed to explore the root cause of a lot of those communication ruptures and taking things personally and reacting before we go deeper into the communication over the next month.
Exactly. And I think why this is so important to address is because really shame has a lot to do with our relationship and our perception of ourself and our self-esteem. And that's why it will affect our relationship so much.
Yeah, because I've never felt shame of another one. Like, I've never felt, you almost can't feel shame on behalf of someone else. I might feel embarrassed for someone, or I might be, if I'm honest, there's been times where I have been embarrassed by the behaviour of someone that I'm connected with or associated with, but it's actually my own shame. You can't actually feel shame of another. I just had that insight then.
Right. But we can empathise with someone's shame. And why our relationship becomes such a potent container for our shame is because shame can be healed, integrated in relationship, because often it's when we're being held, being loved, being witnessed in this emotion that helps us resolve it. And that's why being vulnerable and opening up, being willing to name that we're not feeling enough, that we feel like we're broken, that we feel like there's something wrong with us, and then being loved through that, which we've experienced, and we've supported couples to have the skills, have the understanding to be able to do that for themselves. It is immensely healing and intimate. It's so connecting.
Absolutely. And I think the other reason why it's so essential that a couple learn how to navigate this topic is because the nature of intimate relationship involves sex, and I haven't met a human yet who doesn't have some kind of shame around sex, whatever that looks like. Even those people who are really like all about sex, if they're actually really conscious about it, it's because they've done a lot of shame work So it's necessary.
Yeah, agreed. And unless we are willing to turn towards and investigate our shame, it will drive our behavior. And that's why this is so important to address before we look at the behavior of pursuer and distancing, is because what's driving a lot of that behavior a lot of the time is our shame response. And what I mean by that is the vast majority of us have reflexes, we have patterns of behavior and even thoughts to avoid feeling shame. Or if we feel shame, we may collapse and fuse with that shame, where we feel like we're pathetic, we're useful, nothing we do is ever going to work.
Sorry, you just said useful, useless. You mean useless.
Right. Okay.
I'm just doing so that the listener doesn't get confused.
Well, I'm confused because
we feel useless. We might feel ashamed. We feel useless. You said useful.
What an amazing opportunity to practice me being okay with stuffing up.
Yeah.
Right? So what an amazing opportunity. Thank you, babe, for pointing out my inadequacy.
No.
And this is an opportunity for me to nurture myself with self-compassion and know that I'm enough. I don't have to be perfect on this podcast for it to be valuable.
Well done. And just actually really want to take a moment, because in the past, if I had have done that, I think you would have you interrupted my flow.
100%. That's why I'm celebrating myself right now.
I'm just saying that to the listener, but also that just so you know, I wasn't trying to be perfect. It's more just in case the listener was confused because you said useful. So that's why I said it.
Well, my honour and my commitment to this podcast is to let go of my perfectionist.
Awesome, babe.
Because perfectionism is one of the ways that we as human beings try to get away from our shame. Mm-hmm. And I was already noticing that sitting here, listening to myself, listening to Greer. I could hear my inner perfectionist going, oh.
And what's the antidote to perfectionism? Do you remember the term?
No.
What's wrong with you? Wabi-sabi, babe. Wabi-sabi.
We'll explain what that is.
Well, it's the Japanese philosophy. Now, for any Japanese philosophers, this is not my forte, but it's a concept that I love. Wabi-sabi, it's good enough is good enough. And so if there's in the whole podcast, if the one muck-up that you say is useful instead of useless, wabi-sabi, babe. It does not matter.
Well, wabi-sabi is the beauty in imperfection as well.
Oh, is it? Okay, yeah. As I said, I'm not a perfectionist of Japanese philosophy.
I only remember that because wabi-sabi came into our lives when we were renovating the caravan.
Oh, yeah, of course. It was, yeah.
And it wasn't going so well, but it was good enough. And wabi-sabi there was the beauty in the imperfection. And I think that speaks beautifully to being in relationship, because we explain this to all the couples that we work with, is that there's stages of relationship. And quite often in the first stage, in the romantic phase, in the honeymoon phase, we kind of either ignore, brush over, or don't even see our partner's imperfections. And then after a period of time, when the bonding hormones have settled down and we're starting to see this person for their humanness, it can often be that time of reckoning for a couple, where they're not sure if they want to commit or stay. And quite often, it's the humanness that is arising. And do we embrace this person for their gifts and their weaknesses, their flaws, their insecurities, and celebrate them for who they are and their wholeness, and commit to working through and developing those aspects of self that aren't as polished, that aren't as enlightened or loving, to do that work together.
And I actually love that wabi-sabi has come in, because it's reminded me it's the Japanese art form, right? It's when the vase is broken and it gets, I'm remembering now, and that is actually a beautiful metaphor for relationship and for our own wholeness. And literally just in the last 24 hours, I said to you, I was looking at something around my mothering, where my self-identity around who I am as mother and capacity as mother, I was just taking it all apart and being prepared to really not know who I am as a mother. Am I completely disillusioned, or am I this? And so now I can see, just in this last 24 hours, as I've allowed myself to be taken apart and these pieces have come together, and the bond between that gold elixir, I can feel it within this myself. It's this whole new level of containment and knowing as to who I am as mother. And that's because I was willing to go into that very vulnerable place of going, fuck, have I like totally fucked up, and do I have no idea? And then when we allow ourselves to do that and really sit in shame, and thankfully you really held me in that, and then I came into that own space. So that's kind of, I wasn't expecting to share that, but as you know, we always like to share on what's real and alive in us, and that's the wabi sabi. So there you go.
And so before we go off topic too much, it's important that we make a distinction on exactly what we're talking about here with shame, because it's very easy to shame and think of it as a negative emotion. If you've caught up in the NLP world, you'll probably come across coaches that will go, eliminate your negative emotions, which we disagree with. Mm-hmm. We believe that every emotion serves a purpose. And when it comes to shame is actually a socialization mechanism. There's a tool. There's a very important role within shame. If you think of someone who would be described as shameless, quite often they're very narcissistic. Quite often they're a psychopath. They don't have remorse. They don't have a conscience. They don't have empathy. So as difficult as shame can be to feel and move towards, it's not a negative thing. It helps us be social, relational beings. And because it's a social mechanism, how we take on shame, it's through others. It's through our family, our social network, the community at large, our tribe. So when we're young and when we're forming a sense of self and an identity, and we don't have one, we look to others, we look to the external tribe around us to get a reference for who am I. And when our behavior or when our expressions get mocked, get belittled, get ignored, or put down, then we will internalize that and think that there's something wrong with me. And that is really the core belief of shame. There's something wrong with me. I'm not enough. I'm not man enough. I'm not woman enough. I'm not good enough. And we all experience this to some degree. The reality is we're all born into unenlightened family systems who are doing the best with what they know, yet our authentic self will inevitably at some stage not be nurtured. It might be too much, or our expression might be too much, and we're told to quieten down, or maybe we stumble and fall and hurt ourselves learning to ride a bike or something, and our parents have a strong reaction and they're projecting their own insecurity, their own fear, and we think, oh, I shouldn't have done that. You know, there's so many ways that this shame comes about.
Yeah. If you can see me, I see you keep looking at me, it's because I'm having a very somatic response. Because I was just tuning into when you were talking about where shame, and that's that uncomfortable feeling, and it really is one of the most uncomfortable feelings to have. And many of us, including myself, feel it in my base, my sacral, my solar plexus. It's this sense of like, I'm unsafe. There's something wrong with me, and I'm powerless, and who I am, I'm at risk of being shunned in some ways. And when you said that, I'm going to go there. I really thought, okay, where's the moment where I felt the most shame? Because I was trying to recall it in my body. And now I can feel it, right? My mouth is dry. My heart is pulsing. And this is why I started breathing deeply. I don't know if you noticed. because this is what happens to me more so in women's circle when I'm revealing something or when I've spoken something to Aaron. And so thank you, body. Thank you, spirit. Thank you, my own trauma and experience with shame, because it's really coming up to be shared here. And for me, it was when I was 19 and I was on exchange. Aaron knows this story. I'd been on exchange in France for a year. I had fallen in love with my first partner, who was 10 years older. He was my first sexual partner. And I noticed I had like what I thought was a spider bite on my groin, and it was really sore and itchy. And I showed a family member over there. She was older, and she took me to the doctor. The doctor told me it was a herpes sore, and I was like, and it was in French. So the French word for herpes is herpes. Is that sexy? Aaron laughs because whatever I say in French sounds sexy.
Not that one.
Herpes. So see your comment then, that triggers a little bit of shame in me.
Yeah, fair enough.
You know, and it's like, it's this this thing.
It's not because of the word. It sounds like her piss. Sorry. Sorry to interrupt you. It was like her piss.
Okay, so perfect. It's perfect because when we're in shame, we're going to take everything personally, right? So thank you. And so what happened is I went to the doctor. He told me that I didn't get a blood test or anything done because it was kind of clear. And this is time back before the internet, so I couldn't Google it. I'd kind of heard of it because it's always in jokes in like South Park and in so many movies, but I'd never thought of it. And this is my first sexual partner, so, you know, I wasn't like, it just wasn't anything that I thought I would ever need to experience. And when I came home from the doctors, I walked in and it was like with my host auntie. And there was like her husband, her mother, so the grandmother, 2 other aunties and 1 other uncle in the room. And we walked in and my auntie said, "Oh, it's herpes," in front of everyone. And I remember just being like mortified. I was so mortified. And I remember going home and telling my boyfriend at the time, and he was like, "Well, I've never had it. No, you know, none of my partners have had it. Like, I don't know where you got it from." In this sense, I mean, this was not a conscious relationship. And I remember being at 19 and I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell anyone over there. And I think the first person I told was about maybe 2 or 3 years later. It was my dad. I still remember we were hanging out the washing and I had all this stuff coming up and I talked to him about it and he was great. And then I remember it took me years to tell my sisters and I didn't tell them. It was 7 years later that I told my sisters. And so I was like, okay, I've got to tell you something. And I had that same thing. And I also want to note in this moment that I have no somatic response happening now. And this is the beauty of shame. When it comes up, obviously I just had another layer come up, but when it comes up and we speak to it and sit it and feel it and allow that energy to come up and speak to what we need to, as long as it's safe, and I'm just assuming that all the listeners here are safe, bit of an assumption there, but it passes. And so that's the thing with shame. It's this willingness to go in and feel it, to express it. And I don't need to go any more into that story because I think I've shared what I needed to about that.
Well, I want to there's a few really key points around shame and how people respond and react to it and the delicacy of the discernment of who you reveal your shame with and to. Because this is huge. If you reveal your shame and your vulnerability to someone who cannot hold it, it will just amplify it. It will just make it worse. So first of all, I heard, considering you'd only had one sexual partner at the time, and then your boyfriend at the time just completely denying it, would you say that he was lying?
Well, maybe. Or maybe he hadn't had it. Because people can carry it and you don't have it.
No, I know.
So people can carry the virus but not actually have sores.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
I do believe that he'd never had a sore.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I thought when I heard that, I thought that his reflex was just to straight out deny it.
I never saw him have a sore. So, and we were together for 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that is one of the ways that people respond to shame is just straight out denial. And it's not that they're necessarily a vindictive person or got bad character. It's that quite often when someone isn't really wanting to accept something about themselves or something that's happened to them, they will often do whatever they can to push that away and to just kind of get on with it. And they think that that's a way of coping, and in some ways it is. But the issue festers under the surface. The second thing I wanted to ask you about is, tell me more about that process with your sisters. Why did you know, or why did you feel so compelled to get it off your chest?
I knew that I was holding it back for fear of judgment. And
And what was that costing you?
So ultimately it's costing me my full expression. So which ultimately limits my connection, because there's some kind of veiling. And as you said, there is absolutely a time for discernment around this. But yeah, if I notice there's something that I want to share, if I notice there's something that I want to share, but I don't for fear of judgment, and there is a deeper part of me that knows that this is a safe person, and, before you and I were together, I let you know that I carried the virus, and I knew that I needed to do that for me. And so, again, it's like because of this desire for honesty, that's why. That's why I shared it.
I also think that holding on to it becomes a burden.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's one of the costs of holding these things in that we're ashamed about, is they just become burdens to us. And they become heavy and they dull us down. It just becomes an emotional weight that we've got to carry through life. And you can see people that are heavily burdened by shame, like they hunch over, they hide from the world, they don't, they struggle to look people in the eye. And this is one of the symptoms of recognizing when shame is up. And just take this one into your life and relationship, is if you're struggling to look someone in the eye, it's highly likely that you're experiencing shame. It's really hard to be seen in our shame. But holding that eye contact is really essential in bringing resolution to it and knowing that we are lovable, we are okay as we are in our humanness.
Yeah, and I know in deep shares that we've had when we've been doing deep shame work together, that it's that whole, like, we don't say look at me in the eye, but when we sit there and we're looking at that, it's so hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
I remember being in a couple session with Robert Augustus Masters, and my shame was really up, and it was so hard. He was guiding it and facilitating it so well, and RIP, Big Dog Masters, God bless you, brother. But I just remember so viscerally how difficult it was to look at you. I don't even remember what the shame was about anymore, but I just, it was so hard to look at you in the eye. And I see it quite often in men's work. This is something that we often work with in men's work, is getting to the core and root of our shame, for many reasons. But ultimately, shame is a burden, and it's not one that we need to carry alone or should carry alone. Our partner's imperfect, we're imperfect. Let's love each other through our imperfections.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, there is a time for feeling remorse, and there is a time to taking responsibility and really recognizing that we fucked up, we've made a mistake, that, and that's particularly when we've done something wrong or something out of integrity. I think it's better a word. If I've acted out of integrity, it's like, I did something like I read a message of yours that you had the other day. I don't normally read your messages, and that we don't hide anything from one another, but there was a message and it kind of caught my eye, and it wasn't about anything I had, it was nothing, but when you walked in, I realized, I was just reading a message. I hadn't actually asked your permission. And I noticed when that happened, I don't think I voiced this, that I had a bit of shame about that, because I realised, I acted out of integrity there. And I named it to you in the sense that I said, I read your message. I didn't mean to. It's just it was there.
But this is an important opportunity to name the difference between healthy shame and toxic shame.
Yeah.
Like, healthy shame is I did wrong, but I'm not a bad person. I'm not deficient. There's nothing wrong with me. I just did something wrong.
Yeah.
Toxic shame is I did that thing and I'm a piece of shit. I'm pathetic. What's wrong with me? Why do I always do this?
Yeah.
You know, the voice of that inner critic is fueled. The emotional fuel of the inner critic is shame.
100%. And I would just, if I go back to the herpes example, that was a deep toxic shame, in the sense that I didn't do anything. And I remember seeing it because I had so many therapy sessions, and I remember talking to someone who's just saying, I just feel like I don't deserve it. It's not like I was, I caught it from the first person I had sex with. And I remember her saying, even if you'd had sex with 50 people, you still don't deserve it. And I remember when I talked to my dad, and I just said, I just feel so dirty. And he was like, you're not dirty, Greer. And again, so even if we didn't do anything, but there's something within us, there's something that's wrong, inherently fundamental wrong within us, that I myself felt that there was definitely a part of me that was broken. Yeah. So it's not always an action.
And I'm conscious not just to talk about us the whole podcast. Yeah. We will get to how shame shows up in relationships. And before we go there, I'll just run through some of the ways that my own shame has showed up in my life and the impact of that. Because from a man's perspective, what can induce shame, it can be different. For me, it started right back at my birth. I had a traumatic birth. I was over 2 weeks overdue. The placenta had died. The cord was wrapped around my neck. I was lucky to be born and then rushed straight to emergency. And so from the very beginning, my entry into this world, there was something wrong with me. There was something wrong with my body. The doctors gave me the nickname of the 100-year-old baby because all my fat stores had been eaten up and I was all wrinkly. And so from the get-go, there was something wrong with my body. I was sick. I was on antibiotics for the first 3 years of my life, and that caused an immense amount of stress to my parents. And then they inevitably broke up when I was 4. So for me, shame has been a heavy burden that I've had to carry and continue to carry for my whole life. And that, what I would describe as pre-verbal shame, before I could talk, before I even have conscious memory of it, has been such an insidious, how would I describe it? Insidious, do you have a word?
Predominant, omnipresent, perpetual.
Well, yeah, it's just like a festering wound that has influenced how I've thought about myself, my preoccupation with how others are perceiving me, or whether I'm being accepted or not. So there was the pre-verbal shame. There's something wrong with my body. As a boy, a young man, and still today, I continue to battle with, like, I would call it like a mild case of body dysmorphia, where it doesn't matter how healthy I am or what's going on. I always look at my body and will look at its imperfections and its flaws and what's wrong with it. And it's just like there's a part of myself, I wouldn't say it's my whole self, but there's a part of me that is like kind of obsessive at pointing out and looking at myself in the mirror and trying to find what's good and what's not. And I've had a lot of difficulty in taming that part of myself. There was being broken up with in grade 6 out of nowhere with
Juliana.
My first love.
Juliana. Hello, Juliana. I've heard lots about you.
But that first love, prepubescent time, just had no awareness at all of any relational dynamics. It's not like I grew up with healthy relational dynamics in my family system. And then out of nowhere, she just broke up with me, and it just absolutely tore me to shreds. I can remember going home and just yeah, going crazy, like throwing my toys around, bashing the couch, crying, angry, and yeah, just feeling completely devastated. And how that impacted me moving forward was a real lack of confidence around girls and women that I was particularly attracted to, because there was just this deep-seated fear that they were going to hurt me in some way. So yeah, that shame impacted my confidence massively. Look, the list goes on. You know, not being accepted and embraced by my step family, being the black sheep of the family. Honestly, there's been so many ways in which shame has been a burden for me. And what I've come to see in retrospect is how much those childhood and adolescent shame traumatic events really propelled me and fueled my behavior and motivation to be something special, to be extraordinary, to prove something to the world, to my family, and to myself ultimately, so that as a young man, I partied really hard and had a bit of an ego in going harder than anyone else, trying to prove something. I'd push my body in the gym. I did one course of steroids at the age of 20 to try prove something, to try make my body fit an image of being enough that was, you know, imposed by society's standards. Then there was around the career and trying to be something special and proving something there as well. So really trying to prove something has been the big behavior. It's trying to prove something has been the behavior that has ultimately been me unconsciously trying to get away from my shame. And when Greer and I were first in relationship, I didn't even have a language for what shame was, which is crazy to me to think back that there was a time in my life as a young adult that I didn't even know what it was, because it was driving me incessantly, unconsciously.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting is that it didn't look like that from the outside.
No.
It looked like you're incredibly confident, that you were full of self-belief. And I think this is the great danger of shame, is that it actually makes us extremely vulnerable, because fortunately you didn't get too far down that cult, but the men's empowerment cult.
Oh, that's because the leader was also a raging narcissist.
Well, yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, I think when someone is, especially when it's in our unconscious, which shame often is. I know I had, until we met, I mean, I knew there was the herpes thing, I knew there was my eating disorder thing, but I had, I didn't really have language around shame. I didn't have the awareness that that's what that was. Maybe, but not really. It wasn't until we were in relationship doing the shame work. But I didn't realise how much it was shame that was driving all of my shadow behaviours and the things that weren't serving me. And it's because I was wanting to get away from that feeling of sitting with something's wrong with me and it's not okay for me to be who I am, for me to express the truth of who I am. I also had a need to be something special and to stand out and shine, so that I would be good enough, so that I would be loved. And I'm either the best or I'm nothing.
Yeah.
You know, there was no in between.
Yeah.
And so, again, that made me vulnerable for lots of things, and for not feeling safe to speak my no, and to, you know, making big commitments that weren't actually my truth. And it's because I didn't feel safe in who I was. That solar plexus energy and the base and the sacral weren't actually really healthy and feeling solid and whole, integrated.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you said there, babe, around, you know, I'm either special and high and mighty, or I'm nothing. Yeah, that is such a great way of explaining the two ways that we can go when shame is activated. And this is where it becomes relevant for relationships, for life in general, but also relationships, because as a reflex to get away from that shame, that inadequacy, some of us will get entitled, will become righteous, and aggressive. And this is a common one, particularly for men. They'll get aggressive, and on the outwardly, it looks like they're being powerful or they're trying to, dominate. What isn't so obvious is so often it's a way of getting away from an inadequacy or feeling powerless or not enough.
Oh, to be honest, babe, with the women that I work with, I think it's also very predominant in women, and this is where, but for women, it might look more like aggression, control, and criticism, and
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more historically, to tie it back into patriarchy. Something Terry says in patriarchy, men are allowed to feel two emotions, and that's lust or anger. So, historically, that's kind of the emotions that men were allowed to feel within patriarchy. But sure, totally hear you that many women also get aggressive as a way of avoiding their vulnerability.
Yeah.
And sometimes that aggression, it's not always harsh. Sometimes it can just be sneaky sarcasm or belittling, or that overt power over can be. Sometimes it can have a facade of niceness.
Sure.
But yet the other person still puts themselves slightly above or better than the other, even if it has an air of niceness and formality.
Yeah. And so would you say the opposite of that is more coming to like emotional disconnection and just that walling in of the self?
Sure. Well, yeah. So often when we get fused with our shame, like we collapse. We go within, because it's so often that reflex where we go into the more grandiosity, the aggression. That's the reflex away from our shame, trying not to feel it. But then if we collapse into it and we fuse with that shame, then we will think, what's wrong with me? There'll be contempt for the self, and we'll collapse and go within. And a good way to recognize where shame is prevalent is if there's blame. Blame and shame are two sides of the same coin. Because if we're blaming the other and our finger's pointing out, then we're blaming and shaming them. If that finger is pointed back at self and we're blaming and shaming ourselves, then we'll collapse and go within. And one of the difficulties with being in relationship with someone who is so shame-based is that when they collapse and go within and they're blaming themselves, their orientation is selfish. They lose their capacity to attune to the other person, to think, well, how is this for you? How are you in this? Like, I can think of a client, he would explode as his reflex, his reaction when he was feeling inadequate or vulnerable. And then he would fall and collapse into shame when he'd realise that he was aggressive, and he'd go within and, fuck, what's wrong with me? And he'd collapse. And when I was working with him, I pointed out that, with compassion, I did this very gently. I said, brother, you're still thinking about yourself. You're still oriented towards yourself here. Yes, I can see that you're feeling remorse, but you're not attuning, you're not looking up and connecting with the other person.
Yeah, and that's where the relational piece comes in, because shame will exist within relationship. We both still have moments where shame can come in, but the difference is being able to come in and share that with our partner, and we may use the shame word, or it may just be explaining the deeper aspect of what's happening for us, or the inner narrative that we've got going on. But there's an awareness that I'm feeling something that's uncomfortable, and there's something that I need to share with you. And that's where we do bring in those communication skills. So that, but again, we need to be able to aware that that's the feeling. Yeah.
And I can think of an example early on in our relationship where you were innocently asking me about a topic that was sensitive for me, but we didn't have as, the irony I was about to say, as good a communication skills. I was going to say gooder. As good a communication skills. Committing to the imperfection. I can think of an example early on in our relationship when our communication skills weren't as good as they are today. And yeah, you came in and opened up a topic that for me was deeply personal, deeply vulnerable, and the safety within that conversation hadn't been established, and I got aggressive. Before I got aggressive, I was trying to hold it all in. And so, we'll go more into this in the next podcast around the pursuer distancer. But in that moment, it looked like I was withdrawing and it looked like I was being avoidant, but really I was like doing my best to contain myself.
You were driving.
I was driving. That's why I'm doing this. I was driving and I was gripping the wheel and I was holding it in. And if there was a fly on the wall, they'd be going, oh, he's distancing, he's avoiding. But no, I was like holding in my rage.
Yeah.
And that rage, again, was a defense reflex, a mechanism against me feeling that vulnerability and that sense that I'm wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's a good example too that we can hold shame about things. Like I remember when I first told you I had herpes, you were like, just like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, it just wasn't a thing. And I remember it taking me so much, like months. Yeah. I've been prepared for telling you for months. So
I know, I still remember it. Like you would built it up and I'm like, what is this going to be?
So, but again, it's because my inquiry, I didn't see anything to be ashamed about. Like I was just like, I was innocently inquiring because I didn't consider it something that you would be ashamed. That's also about, I didn't know you as well as I know you now. But then that's the other thing with shame is that we could hold shame about something that's deeply, deeply shameful for us and deeply personal, whereas for another, it's just not a big deal and it's tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got one of my best friends. He has no body shame at all. And when I've shared my struggles around my body shame, he's just like, I've never even thought about that. Greer knows who I'm talking about.
To be fair, he's got a pretty good body.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, I just couldn't even imagine not having body shame. I was like, I couldn't even imagine a life where it's not a thing. Like that's how strong that body shame has been for me. Yeah. And another one that we mentioned it in the sexuality podcast of how shame will get really entwined and start to distort and create issues in our sexuality as well. This is one of the ways that we try to feel enough, or there will be in many ways that we will feel shame about our bodies, about our genitals, and that also impacts how we show up relationally in the sexual domain as well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But if we're not realizing that it's actually the shame being triggered, then we miss out on the opportunity to heal that in relationship. Mm. And that's why sexuality can be so liberating and healing, is when we have the courage, when we create the safety within one another to honor when that shame comes up, and we can help heal it within one another.
Mm. Absolutely. And actually we haven't discussed this, but do you think it's possible to heal shame solo on our own?
No.
Do you think we can? Yeah.
No, because it's a social mechanism that we learn shame in relationship. Mm. We learn shame in relationship to others and how we are or are not appreciated, accepted, embraced. Yeah.
I'm just sorry. Yeah. So I'm just thinking of and again, we're sharing these examples not because we think we're particularly interesting, but because shame heals from hearing another's truth and in that honesty and being seen for ourselves. So I just want to put a caveat there. But I remember one of my other shame pieces around sexuality was one of probably the earliest moments I felt around shame. And this was, I don't remember anyone else being there, but I remember like back in the day when we used to get catalogues, and I've shared this with you, that like catalogues for back then it was like Venture and Harris Scarf. Anyone who's my age would know.
Classy.
Yeah. But I remember I would look through and there were like, when it got to the bit where there were men in undies and women in bras, and I remember like when my puberty was just coming on and feeling like starting to get this tingle, I would say, and feeling like, oh, what's that, not knowing. And I never spoke that to anyone. And then also I remember looking at girls and thinking they were pretty. And I have quite a lot of homosexuality in my family, and I never had any judgment towards that. But I remember thinking, oh God, I think there's some girls that I think are pretty. Am I homosexual? And this fear of like, Aaron loves it. So
stay focused.
So this feeling of like, oh, and then again, I remember in my 20s or so, again on drugs and kissing a girl once, and then telling my high school, my friends, and then going, and one of them made this comment and saying, oh, her words were, I always thought you were a bit leso. And I remember this like shame of like, oh, it's not okay for me to follow my desire, my attraction, and that I need to, and it's, thankfully, babe, thank you for being the person to help me with this. It's like being able to be honest about the different spectrum of desire and how that looks for me at different times in my life. And you holding that quite happily.
Yep.
So again, that has healed in that way.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as we move towards wrapping this up, really, shame inhibits our authentic self.
Yeah.
Our truth. And I shared something with you only a few days ago that I don't think I'd shared with you before. Like, just to give another example of what I would describe as relational trauma. It's not a big T trauma that's like sexual abuse, physical abuse, like a house burning down. They're big T traumas. Relational traumas can be something like going to your father and saying, Dad, when I grow up, I want to play AFL. And him going, well, there's a lot of people doing that, and, it's pretty hard to get in. Maybe have a think about something a bit more realistic. And as a 6-year-old boy, just feeling so deflated and like, oh, I can't be me. I can't, I'm not good enough to go for what I really want. That's the message. That's the belief that gets taken on, that there's something wrong with us. And I've just...
Yeah,
well, I feel sad for
it's
my 6-year-old self.
Little 6-year-old Aaron. But that's a really good example, because your dad wasn't being nasty.
No,
he wasn't
exactly.
being malicious. He was being very real and honest, and like, well, you could, but again, if we don't have these relational skills, even as parents, it's and we can do both. We don't have to give our child an inflated self-esteem, which is equally unhelpful. So you can do anything you want, and you want to be an AFL player, you'll be one. But it's more, I was talking to my daughter about it, who loves acting and singing, and she just saw The Lion King, and I said, well, babe, I really believe that if you really commit to it and practice, you could absolutely do something like that if you work at it, as opposed to, and then I said to her, I don't know if you'll get into Hollywood.
I don't know if you would want it.
No, I don't. I do not want her in Hollywood.
No.
And she said, oh, thanks, Mum. And I thought, no, I mean, like, you could, like, maybe, but I'm saying you could definitely go big. And so, I mean, yeah, it's all, now I'm like questioning that, or should I have not said that? But we can mean well.
We'll find out when the therapy bill comes in.
Do you remember that time when I was 12 and you said that?
Well, before we do wrap this up, I think it's a really important point there that, yes, shame can be deflating, but just to speak to that parenting point, the other way that parents can affect us negatively is a false empowerment, where we're given too much power before we're developmentally ready. And that is also another way that it also impacts how we show up in relationship, because it will feed our grandiosity and not ground us into our empathy.
And what that could lead to, I think, is that if someone has been falsely empowered as a child and then they have this false, sense of self, or is inflated sense of self, is when they grow up and get into the real world and realize, oh, I'm not going to be in the AFL if I'm not this person that let's say your dad had have said, yep, it's already done, mate, it's done, and then you didn't get in, then your whole sense of worth could be attached to being the AFL player. And so then if it doesn't happen, if that's been inflated, then it's like, well, who am I if I'm not that? I'm nothing. Yeah. So
I actually think that I haven't made a big case for this, but I do believe that in the near future, this false empowerment is going to become quite a thing for the younger generations, because our generations have felt the burdens of shame and haven't wanted to dump that on our kids. Yet it's that whole pendulum analogy that we've shared in previous podcasts. It's like we've gone from being so shame-based to being so like anti-shame, and we just pump our kids up. Oh, you're just amazing. Or I've heard of parents going into teachers and just telling them ridiculous things because they don't want their child to feel inadequate. But the thing is, you've got to set your child up for being grounded in reality. It doesn't mean you shame them. It means you got to prepare them for the world.
Reminds me, we had friends over for dinner on Friday night and we were talking about playing chess. And we've got 15, 12 and a 6-year-old, and I was talking to one of the mums and saying, yeah, like our 6-year-old's pretty good, but I play like pretty well. And she was like, oh, I just play full throttle with my 6-year-old. She's like, oh yeah, she's got to know how it works. And it was done love and jest. But yeah, our kids need to learn that they're not going to win every game, and that they will, and supporting them through the natural journey of that shame, so they have that experience of like, oh, maybe they go into the toxic shame. I'm not good enough. Like, let's just use a light example like chess. Oh, there's no point in me playing because I'll just lose. And sit them with them and show them and guide them and teach them. Yeah. And again, like that's with kids, it looks a bit differently, but we can do that in relationship as well.
Yeah, it's like building self-esteem based on merit.
Yeah.
Like not just pumping up and yeah. Maybe.
Well, honesty.
We're going into parenting.
Yeah, let's stop.
Another way for us to embrace being perfectly imperfect.
Wabi sabi, that was just a piece of the vase that will turn around in that way so you don't see it.
All right, so just sitting in that vulnerability of not being perfect.
Where do you feel it in your body, babe?
Oh, in my solar plexus.
Oh, you just that's the Udanavai wanting to come out and be seen.
Yeah. All right.
Strong finish.
So if you've been listening this far, we thank you for listening this far, and we trust that you've received some kind of insights. And if you have, we'd love to hear what were the insights. And if you want to go deeper into meeting your own shame and starting to face it, we've actually got a free resource for you.
So we've got a pre-recording that is from a previous course that we taught many years ago now, and it's a guided journey where I guide you into a somatic experience of shame in your body with the intention to learn to be with that and cultivate a new relationship with that shame. And it's a powerful process. It's what somatic, internal family systems is based on, and this is the whole thing. If we were to wrap it up, with shame, it's going to be within us. As you saw, I had another very visceral thing come up from 30 years ago. That moment happened 29 years ago. And so it will continue to come up, but the more we learn to be with it and actually somatically be with it and allow it to move through us and then express what we need to express rather than going to the full narrative of it all, then it does gradually integrate. Maybe it never goes away, maybe it will, but that's not really the point. The point is to learn, how do I meet it when it's here? And when we do that in relationship, we learn to know one another's pain body, know one another's shame piece, and then we get to support one another through that. So if you'd like that recording, message us, email us, connect to intimacyforcouples.com and just say, can I please have the shame process? And we'll send it to you.
And if you haven't already, please subscribe, follow us, give us a 5-star rating. It would mean the world to us. We're really doing our best to deliver as much value. And if you are receiving value, the way you can support us is just following us, sharing it with someone who you think would appreciate and receive the value.
And if you're not already subscribed, we invite you to jump onto our email list. Aaron writes most of them, admittedly, and you can get that by just going on to intimacyforcouples.com, scrolling down to the bottom, and there's the subscription link there.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.